The recording.
Okay, great. Then I'd like to say hello to everybody that we've got with us right now. I think we're going to get several more, but let me just, there, we've got
Visual.
your visual, thank you. I'd just like to say hello to the people who are here right now, and then I'll turn it over to Duane. I'd like to also say happy full moon and happy solstice and happy December and happy holidays to everybody. Okay, with us today we have Anne Veronica, we have Antoinette, we have Asha, we have Catherine, we have Deborah, Diana, Helen, James, Kay, Sharon, Vera, Walter, and of course on the staff we've got Rose and myself, BL, and then there is our great presenter, Duane. So over to you, Duane.
Oh, that's so sweet, BL. Thank you. We appreciate you taking time from your busy schedules around the holidays to participate with us. There's just so many wonderful presentations and commentators talking about so many important subjects. It's really difficult to take them all in. Anyway, I'd like to thank the Moya Federation for the opportunity to do an additional presentation in this series, and special appreciation for BL and Rose for their technical assistance. Now, in the start of our presentation today, I would like to start with a quote, and I'm going to see if I can enlarge this so that everyone will have a good opportunity to see it clearly. Okay. And this is a quote from unpublished Friday evening talks by Alice Bailey, March 5th, 1943. Rose, would you like to read that for us?
The Master's ashram is not on the mental plane. Quote, "We have to learn to use the intuition because the Master's ashram is not on the mental plane. The plane on which we shall someday eventually work is not the mental plane. One of the things we have to learn to do in this new era is to get off the mental plane with all the knowledge and detail and technicalities that we have so painstakingly acquired and begin to develop that something that we call the intuition, which is the source of illumination." And as Duane said, March 5th, 1943, Friday evening address by Alice Bailey.
To master. There's so much information that we can acquire through study and research. And this is important because we need to have a firm mental base from which we can move into the higher mind and the intuition. So everyone knows from previous presentations, we're not really beating up on the mind. We're just sort of trying to put it in its rightful place. I'm having some difficulty, Rose, in making an exit. Okay, thank you. Now, with that preparatory statement, I'd like to just use the symbol of Capricorn that we've just gone into, and it's such a powerful time of the year with the winter solstice and the Capricorn full moon. And just review visually some of the key characteristics of Capricorn. Looking at this image, we can see that Capricorn expresses rays 1, 3, and 7. And we have the figure of the goat, which is renowned for its ability to climb to high areas in cragged rock formations that can be dangerous and require a lot of skill and balance. That has always been used as an analogy of scaling the mountains of initiation. Rhythm, balance, stability, and courage to be able to feel confident to move forward into these higher recesses. Shooting off from the horns, which are a symbol of duality and dual rotary motion, which we're going to explore in quite a lot of detail in this session, you have what I call the tree of life. Not the tree of knowledge, but the tree of either wisdom or life. And yet, these two trees that shoot off from where the horns are placed are really electrical discharges. And to keep in theme with our presentations around electricity, we want to always try to weave that in. That all initiation is a progressive entry into more advanced types of electrical and magnetic substance, and that eventually all of these ageless wisdom teachings will be put into an Aquarian scientific form that will bypass a lot of historical traditions that, for all of their usefulness in the past, have really bogged a lot of people down. Imagine a universal language of science, of energy and force that can be understood by all cultures, different civilizations, and metaphysical groups. And of course, between the trees, you have, in the electrical discharges, you can see the bright point of white light that signifies the culmination of the third initiation. Tinted, no doubt, by your unique soul coloring, but predominantly that blaze of glory. And then slightly above that, you have the diamond. And the diamond is a symbol of the first ray, its power, its purpose, its strength. And it has many facets, but it unifies and brings together synthetically many, many isolated parts. Off to the right and left, we have two vortices going in opposite directions. Ray 7 to the right, ray 3 to the left. And Capricorn is really one of the predominant signs, and it brings with it influences that help the advanced disciple who's gone through the preparatory initiations to go through the third. It's the electricity of Shambhala coming down from the upper triad into passing through the soul, and then of course into the threefold personality. So we have a 5-pointed star in the forehead of the goat, which symbolizes the mastery of 5 energies and the white brotherhood and many, many other important esoteric themes. We've made it the color green because there's a lot of emphasis for the third ray. It also has a Saturnian influence we're going to explore a little bit. And it has a Venusian. The Saturnian, of course, is predominantly the third ray. Although we will see that there's a first ray connection silently lying behind this. Okay, so let's move into the next image and the one after that. Enter. Okay, good. Is anyone having difficulty seeing the text because of the header? And I can move it up slightly. We know in astrology there's 3 animals that have horns, and we're going to speak just generally about them as we go through this opening astrological introduction. BL, would you like to read this section?
Okay. The dual vortex and the 2 horns. The 2 horns mentioned here by DK are symbols of duality and esoterically relate the right and left channels of the great Kundalini force, Ida and Pingala. These 2 force centers or channels run up and down to the right and left side of the disciple's etheric body. When both can become linked and fused, there is now a free flow of energy and force from the highest levels to the lowest, and the higher initiations can be taken. This fusion is facilitated by the dynamic release of the great Kundalini force that begins at the 3rd initiation and climaxes at the 6th. The central channel of the Kundalini fire, or sushumna, is symbolized by the unicorn's golden horn, to which DK refers. The sinuous twisting of the great serpent fire parallels in many respects rotary spiral cyclic motion as it makes its ascent up the spine and out of the top of the head. The unicorn's golden horn best approximates exoterically these hidden and esoteric truths. The horn is golden because it is only through the great 4th ray of Buddhic love that this whole process can proceed with any degree of safety and according to occult law. The Buddhic plane and the 4th ray occupy the position of divine mediators between spirit and matter. We're told by DK that the 7th ray works through the base center in average humanity, through the 1st ray in advanced disciples, and the 4th ray through the base of the spine in advanced initiates. This is also the basis of the great annunciation by the Christ, that no man goes to the Father, Spirit, but by way of the Son, the Son. It is Mercury which transmits this great 4th ray to humanity.
Excellent. Thank you, BL. We're not trying to stimulate the Kundalini fire in any way, but as people move down the path of initiation, it's good to have a theoretical outline of certain events that are going to take place. And I have been quite impressed how many people are beginning to have spontaneous Kundalini movement without any special breathing exercises or focus on that base center, which we, of course, are told can be dangerous. But the question I ask is that if this great power begins to move of its own volition, we should be prepared to understand what we're about to undergo. Okay, are there any questions to that?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, now here we have the other horned animal, which is Aries the ram. And we're not going to go into this in great detail because this is not Aries, But you'll note that just like Capricorn, it has ray 1 and 7. And when you review the bigger picture and you understand that all occult lives are spherical and that they have a place in this sphere of entry and exit, you understand where the dual vortex comes in. Energy pours in through the top, energy circulates, and it can come out down at the bottom. So this is the ray 1 and 7 dual vortex dynamic. And I really am very partial to this image because it shows the twist and sinuousness of the ram's horns. Very, very powerful. Are there any questions on this image and the idea of the first ray and the seventh ray, the highest and the lowest meeting as two energies come together and sync?
No questions yet.
Okay, excellent. The mountain top of initiation. I'm getting a little feedback. What is the mountaintop of initiation so frequently referred to in esoteric literature, but another symbol of the vortex cone that each disciple must create in the meditative state in its different stages to reach perfection? What is the long horn of the unicorn? But a symbol of rotary, spiral, cyclic motion that climaxes in a searing point of piercing will. An inner trumpet, out of the throat of which issues forth the sounds of God's hidden purpose in will. Not language as we understand it, but pure first subplane Davic fire. What distinguishes the new Agni Yoga teachings from all past work? The revelation that at the heart of each occult organism, chakra or force center, whether cosmic, systemic, or planetary, all are connected and fused by that point of divine will. It is this identification that brings all diverse principles and laws into one synthetic whole. And for those of you who have studied astrology, you know the importance DK places on the unicorn and how, amongst other things, it relates to the third initiation and after, where the ajna center is opened. And for that to take place, the personality has to be slain. Okay, any questions? What we're doing here is we're creating some introductory statements so when we get to our animations, they will have more power. And this is somewhat paradoxical since we opened with a quote by Alice Bailey that spoke eloquently about the limitations of the mind and how that we're supposed to go beyond it. And it's a reconcilable paradox when we understand that information creates the base, and when you meditate, you create a thought form that has to have some type of structure or substance. And when that thought form is projected through what is called meditation with seed, at some point, you are going to go from an active visualization to what DK calls an active passive visualization, where the mental body is held in a point of tension, but now you're open and receptive to the downflow of that which you're invoking. So the idea of the first ray directing, driving, and building is so important. Now, before we move into the next image, I just want to point out that DK states that in our present system, there are two dominant evolutions, the human and the deva. There are 60,000 million human monads, and there are 140,000 feminine deva monads. And altogether, you have the necessary 200,000 million monads. And then he states at the end of this quote, "This elucidates my statement that this is a feminine system. We know it's a second-ray solar system. We know that our sun is of the fourth order. We know that humanity's soul ray is the fourth. And although the devas can work on all 7 of the different rays, they find their path of least resistance through the 2-4-6 line as opposed to the 1-3-5-7. And I think historically, if we see what's taking place in contemporary terms, you're going to see this upsurge of feminine energy, which is not merely just to heal cleavages and to take their rightful place alongside of men, which have for many cycles dominated sort of the landscape, but to find their own power and to make their own contributions that, yes, in coincidence with men and groups and other people, other women, make their important contribution. And I believe that amongst other things, it will be bringing in this new 6th root race, even if only embryonically, of Buddhic intuition and light. And once again, this is one of the purposes of these presentations, is to try to position ourselves to move into that, even if it's only tentatively. Any questions on that quote?
Yes, we do have. We have several, as a matter of fact. So
Excellent.
let me see if I can get Asha. Can you talk?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Yes, thank you. My question was, I was wondering, Duane, you were talking about meditations with seed thoughts.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on meditation where you just sit in awareness? You're aware of your awareness, so like sitting in presence.
Yes.
And if a thought comes, like the neti principle, not
Yes.
this, not that. What are your thoughts on that kind of just sitting in awareness of awareness kind of meditation, business, whatever?
Well, I think that each person has to find out the meditative and alignment techniques that work for themselves best. And the occult approach is to use the mind to go beyond the mind. Very paradoxical statement. And you have to formulate what your intention is. I'm going to sit down and meditate. So you've already mentally set in motion certain forces. And it may be with each person a little differently, but at some point you have to allow that first part of the bridge to interface with the second part of the bridge, which is the presence. And Agni Yoga has a curious phrase that I think is very apropos here when Master M says that you have to get into a state of serene expectancy. And those two words are very, very potent. Serene expectancy. They're almost contradictory, but when you understand the context in which it's spoken and understand how important the mind is to get you to that first major link or level, then if you have created that active passive point of mental tension, the lower thought form making capacity is neutralized. In other words, when you hear the aphorism or metaphor, the mind is the slayer of the real, those enunciations are about the lower mind, not the higher mind. And it would be more appropriate to say that the undisciplined, the uncoordinated mind is the slayer of the real. Because the mind is one of the single most important tools you have to move forward on the path, to ground your energies, to do service, but you have to know how much is enough. Some people need to have libraries of information before they reach that point. Others of us, not so. So I like that idea of moving into a space or a presence where a lot of schools of Zen are into that. And if that works for you, I support it. Just don't ditch the mind on your way to liberation, as many masters have said. Okay, any additional feedback on that, Asher, or questions?
No, thank you. Thank you. I really am enjoying this. There's a part of me tends to not want to seek information, like the way you said in the very first slide.
Yes.
At the same time, I do have this fifth ray kind of curiosity, which can sort of almost lead me astray. So I'm finding my way between those two paths. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a balancing act, and sometimes it can be more of one or the other. And what I mean by that, if you study the Dina books 1 and 2, you will find that the Tibetan was constantly creating and sharing meditations, alignments, visualizations, and a lot of wisdom with his students. And a lot of it related to whether they were more on the 1-3-5-7, the masculine line, or more on the 2-4-6. And if they were too much on the 1-3-5-7, he would say, brother, you are a natural esotericist or occultist. You have knowledge, you have power, but you need to soften yourself. You need to go out and listen to the great symphonies of music in the world. You need to immerse yourself in art. Just absolutely the absolute opposite of where the disciple was. And then on the other hand, if the disciple was too much 2-4-6, the master would say, well, you have a great psychic sensitivity, you have a big heart, people love you, and yet you need to be decisive. You need to be knowledgeable. You need to temper that wonderful 2-4-6 alignment with more of the masculine. And he alternates back and forth, ever seeking balance with his students.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Any additional questions up to this point?
Yes, we have, hold on, let me, oops.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
Go ahead, please, Vera.
Yes. I have a question about the feminine system. 60 billion monads means 60 billion of solar angels. And the Diva kingdom is that feminine, but I am surprised to hear that those 200 billions of monad would be called feminine. So can you?
Well, no, if I've misrepresented, I apologize. No, the Deva amounts were much greater on the than the human monads. The Deva monads had a higher number
Yes.
than the human monads.
But can we say that the monads can be counted as part of the feminine? That's the puzzling part.
Rose, would you like to share your thoughts on that question?
Well, I think in this context that the feminine evolution is generally considered more along the 2-4-6 line and more feminine, whereas the human evolution is the masculine in the 1, 3, 5, 7. So I think that's where that's kind of coming from.
Okay.
Is that right, Duane?
Yes. Okay, on this next image, you see a cone. And the cone is of the 7 rays. Now, you can't see all the colors of the 7 rays till we actually put it into animation. But if you can imagine all these little specks as being a part of the human or Davic evolution, that they are the monads that are drawn into incarnation from a very high level, and that they in turn appropriate or work with solar angels for the next level of descent, and then eventually the elemental life is brought in to create the threefold personality. You can see the power of the first ray, which is the center of the cone, that is the mountaintop of initiation as seen as a vortex. And let's move into the animation. Okay, great. So we're going to minimize the screen and we're going to do a little short meditation. It's only a couple minutes long, but I want you to take the information that I've just supplied around the idea of the mountain, the horn. The horn pierces, it pierces through the veils, or anything that emerges as you watch this image. Okay, excellent. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Would anybody like to share any insights?
I don't see any yet. It's quite lovely, though. Oh, here we go. Go ahead, please, Asha.
Yes, as you said, BL, quite lovely, just beautiful, beautiful, mesmerizing colors. But you know, the whole quality changed once the sound came on. I couldn't quite get into that feeling until the sound came, then it just changed the whole experience for me.
Thank
So
you.
obviously I need sound for some reason. So, but beautiful, thank you. Very evocative.
While we're waiting for any additional questions.
We do have a couple, and
Okay.
I agree with her. You know, I didn't think I was all that audio of a person, but it really changed the dynamics of it when you got the audio portion going with it. Okay, Anne Veronica says, my ajna center vibrated. She said, I missed the lines the unicorn has.
Yes, excellent.
And
Thank you.
And Diana says, looks like the cuspid of the Kono funnel, inspiring and expiring, is trying to get back to a point.
Yes.
And Anne Veronica says it was more powerful with the music.
Excellent.
And then we have another hand. I'm
I
sorry,
would just, I would just like to say that that little music glitch there was just to show everybody the contrast and difference.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Well, it worked. I didn't realize before how important that was to my visualization process, but it is. So thank you for that lesson, Rose. Okay, Sharon has up. Sharon, you're going to have to type your message in. It says you're using an older version of Zoom, and so we can't allow you to talk unless we promote you to a panelist.
Excellent. While waiting for any additional comments.
I think we just lost her. Maybe she went to upgrade.
Okay.
Yeah, I got more here.
Yes, go ahead.
Asha says, as the capstone rises, the base of the pyramid expands.
Excellent.
Interesting metaphor for the spiritual pioneers.
Beautiful. That's so true. If we want stability, we have to have a firm foundation and base. And often the mind can appear like a limitation, and if overdeveloped, obviously it can be, but it creates a really good base of landing after you've launched yourself into an intuitive or abstract level of which is very new and often can be somewhat disruptive in spite of its power and beauty.
Okay, I think that's all we've got right now.
Excellent.
We do have some new people with us now, though. We're getting more people all the time, so.
Okay, great. Well, one last thought before we move into Saturn, which is one of the main energies that characterizes Saturn, the great third ray. I'd just like to say that DK says that the rays in the planes are circular and that they're actually spherical, and that when the rays, which are the second aspect of deity, pass through the planes, which are the third aspect of deity, you have light. Light blazes forth, and the two kingdoms, or the two ray energies, you might say, in their different representatives, they exchange, each one sharing their mystery with the other. Many in the human kingdom need to become more Davic, more fluidic, more loving, more intuitive, more psychic. And those in the Deva evolution, and this is a generalization, they need to become more intelligent, more willful. So it's a trading, and it's a mutual symbiotic relationship in which both evolutions grow by their interaction. Okay,
Antoinette says, a powerful thrust into the funnel. Beautiful, thank you.
excellent.
And Sharon says, it kind of took my breath away. The thought dropped in of Capricorn climbing, piercing, and then going towards Aquarius, water rushing, to then bringing it back around to yet another climbing,
Yes,
piercing, and then turning our backs towards serving thirsty minds. There seemed to
excellent.
be a continual spreading and growing.
Yes, that's very beautifully shared, very poetic, but equally occultly correct. This expansion and contraction and building and destroying, and the use of symbols to help precipitate that process. If there aren't any additional questions, we'll zip into we know that Capricorn, the third ray is really exalted in Capricorn, and we know that Saturn really embodies the third ray. And you can see here the two main colors of the third ray, which is green esoterically and black exoterically. And we also know that Venus is involved in the Capricornian dynamic, and we'll only lightly touch on that. The glyphs on either side, to the right and left, are little sort of like triangles. That's the symbol of lead. And Saturn is very heavy, and it actually demonstrates its influence and power through the first 5 initiations, but in different ways. It relates to time, it relates to karma, the laws of karma, the law of cause and effect. And it can be a heavy, heavy master when you're an aspirant probationer because it exacts its due service. But what we have to understand about Saturn is that the laws of cause and effect and the laws of karma are really subsidiary laws of the laws of the law of love. And that Saturn is really leading us and presenting us with those challenges that will help refine and redeem us from a lot of lower elemental substance from our previous incarnations or previous cycles. So it's like a loving father with tough love. It doesn't let you get away with a single thing. And it will lean on you till you learn its lessons. There's a wonderful, wonderful phrase that DK uses talking about Saturn in the old commentary. And he says that during the first solar system, there were many solar lives that refused. They were masters of the third, or, well, we should say the first solar system, the one of active intelligence, and that when it came time to leave the mother, active intelligence, they refused, and they became trapped in this limiting ring pass knot of the first solar system, and that Saturn, the brother Saturn in its triple expression, because Saturn actually works through the lower mind, the higher mind, and the abstract mind, or the Atmic plane, because the Atmic plane, seen from another level, is really Brahma. It's the third aspect of an even higher level. But the point being here that Saturn came to the aid of its brothers and created a bridge for these beings these angelic angels that were along the third ray to move into this second ray solar system, and now they're undergoing training in the ways of love, in the ways of the intuition and opening the heart. Okay, good. Are there any questions basically? And one last thing before we open it up to questions. You'll see in the very center, it has rays 1, 3, and 7. Actually, I have 5 there. And in very small lettering under the 6-pointed star, you see a little formula that's called Black Sun Antakarana. For any of you who have studied the formulas for group initiation, will recall that at the third initiation, that arrangement of words is presented to the disciple, and they have to figure out what is the correct order. In other words, Black Sun Antakarana forms a triangle with black being the apex, the sun being the left point, and the Antakarana name being the right point. And I'm not going to go in why I arranged it that way, but it's another secret of Saturn on a third level of initiation, where the will, you're working with a group, not just personally, and you're now bringing down, even if embryonically in the early stages of the third initiation, that shambolic force. So paradoxically, sometimes our greatest adversaries can be our greatest allies.
Okay, we have a question from Vera.
Okay. Go ahead, Vera.
A question about that 6-pointed star in the middle.
Yes.
What does it mean?
Okay, the 6-pointed star relates to a number of different things, but it relates to perfect balance between the upper triad and the lower triad. In other words, imagine instead of just being a 6-pointed star, it's also 2 interlaced triangles.
Yeah.
And when the personality, symbolized by the lower triad, the lower mind, the emotions, and the physical etheric, can perfectly reflect the upper triad of the one monadic life, the Atma, Buddha, and high Manas, you have a fusion of the higher and lower, and you have the perfected 6-pointed star, which is a symbol of a very high initiatory level that starts at the 5th and 3rd initiation with the 5-pointed star as a symbol, and then this becomes the 6th. And then it goes into several other symbols that we'll talk about at another presentation. Go ahead, Ann.
And the perfect balance creates also that channel for the will for the Kundalini.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
When the individual will is fused with the will of the soul, and the will of the soul is beginning to fuse with the will of the monad, you create a direct link.
Yes.
And if you've studied the egoic lotus, you know it's in the sacrifice petals and that central jewel. And why it's so important to develop the mind, purity, and open the heart. In fact, to go back to a previous comment, H.P. Blavatsky points out that you have to awaken the Kundalini through the stimulation of the 4th ray. And what happens is that the heart of the disciple, who's now an initiate, the heart of the disciple sends an impulse to the base of the spine, and this is all done according to law, because if you prematurely did that, you would wreak havoc with your vehicles. You would not be prepared for the potency and the power of that ascending Kundalini. So it's only through service, selfless service, and integration of the personality and knowledge of the plan and deep meditation that brings all these fires together so that the Kundalini stimulated once again from the Buddhic plane through the heart, coming up from even higher levels.
Yeah, you explained that aspect, that sort of hard first ray aspect of the fourth ray, which I
Yes.
always sense, but people often see just this beauty balance. Yeah, but there is that oomph in it.
Excellent.
And then we have a question from Anne Veronica too. So
Okay, great.
let me.
Go ahead.
Can you talk, Anne Veronica? We can't hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear her now. She's subtle, but I can hear her. BL, you may need to repeat her question.
Okay, can you hear it? Can you talk now?
Can you hear me now better?
Yes, you're very soft, but we can hear you.
Okay, please can you go back to the image,
Of course.
the previous image? Okay, first of all, I would like to ask for the symbol on top. That symbol I do not know. What does it mean? Second, I would like to ask, does the number 5 go to the antakarana? Maybe that's why the 5 is there instead of the 7. And thirdly, I would like to, whenever I draw the depiction, I don't know if that's the right word, of a Saturn, it gives me a sense that it's the rod that the masters keep in their hands, which for me it's a rod of electricity. If you can talk a bit more about that.
BL, could you translate that a little bit?
I could just barely hear some of it. She was asking about one of the symbols in the picture, and I'm not sure which one. And then,
The disc, the black disc in the center, the sign of Capricorn at the upper apex of the six-pointed star.
was that the image you were asking about, Anne Veronica?
The top image, the top image above the star.
Above the
That's
star, the
that's,
Capricorn?
yeah. Thank you,
Oh, that's
BL.
the Capricorn
Yes.
symbol.
Yes.
Yes, the Capricorn glyph. Uh-huh.
Because I know a different Capricorn.
Yes, there are several different ones. There's one that looks like the horns first and then comes down, but this is also one of them.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Duane.
Oh, no problem. You were very helpful.
Okay, and then you were also asking about the 1 with the black and the 3 with the sun and the 5 with the antakarana.
Yes.
Well, rays 3 and 5 are prominent, and they operate through Saturn. They're mental rays.
Does
3 and
5
5.
go to antakarana? Logically, number 5 has to do with antakarana.
Yes, actually, all the rays have some relationship to the antakarana. Yes. Good.
Okay, and the last question, it's not a question actually, I would like your thoughts on it. Wherever I draw the glyph, I don't know, glyph of Saturn, I feel as if I'm drawing the rod that the masters keep in their hand, which is an electrical rod. I don't know if you could talk about a bit more about that glyph.
The glyph of Capricorn.
No,
I'm sorry, the glyph of Saturn.
yes.
Well, these symbols are hierarchical, and the masters precipitate them into the environment, the mental atmosphere or auric field of all their disciples. And this is the beauty of taking something that the masters that have given us in making it visual and putting in the color correspondences. And as all of our participants have seen in this presentation, seeing it animated. To see it animated is exponential because it demands recognition on a totally different level. You can sit and analyze an animation mentally, but I can guarantee you at some point you'll have moments of lucidity in which the mind will, still existing, fade into the background and more of the intuition will come forward. It's like a seesaw until you finally establish yourself on that intuitive plane. It's like a dance. It's like a dance. And that intuition can often summarize so many ideas, so many pieces of information that are like a huge puzzle. And the intuition is like that last piece of the puzzle in which you step back and you say, oh my God, I see how it all fits together. Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
That's,
Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better? No, thank you.
Yeah, we did there at the
you.
end, we did hear you a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
okay. We sort of covered this a little bit, but just remember that Saturn, it's talking about Saturn relating here to the fourth initiation, but Saturn also has an Atmit link which relates to the fifth initiation. And we know that Saturn is very prominent in the first three initiations for integrating the personality, helping with soul alignment. It's really a series of forces that are working all the time. Okay, now let's check the time.
We're
Okay.
just an hour into the presentation, so we got plenty of time.
Okay, excellent. Now we're going to go into the crosses, the astrological crosses. And for those of you who are astrologers, you may find this of some interest. And I don't consider myself an esoteric astrologer. In some respects, I really couldn't cast a chart. I don't know the technicalities or all the details. And what I look at is what I think is sort of the overview. And really, to be a good astrologer, you need both. So as an artist and trying to apply this idea of the intuition, you're going to get a slightly different take on how I see things. And it may be incorrect, or it may be refreshingly new. I will let all of you make that decision. Okay.
Before we
Yes.
get into that, Asha has a comment here. She says, are there people who have spontaneous Kundalini experiences without any knowledge of this wisdom?
Yes,
Does one have,
absolutely.
she goes on to say, does one have to be, Ganani, on the path to illumination? Does the Bhakt have direct access or must go through the Raja or Ganana path? She says, sincere question as I find myself not wanting information per se, but more a fast forward accelerated track through experience and just being.
Yes. The only difference between ourselves, this group that's come together today, and the average person out on the street as far as spiritual development is the element of time. They are going to reach the same pinnacle, the same level as we are. It's just going to take them longer. And technicalities are important for this reason. Technicalities or information will eventually direct you towards techniques. If you can find the right technique according to your level of development, your ray type, you will be on the fast track as opposed to the average person on the street. When those techniques can be followed with a certain discipline, and there are many from many different schools, it's not just the trans-Himalayan wisdom tradition, it's many, many approaches. Then you get to the stage of transmutation. When you are using the correct technique for where you are in the path, you will quickly, through meditation, alignment, visualization, begin to transmutate. And when enough transmutation is done, you will begin to reach what is called transfiguration or transformation, in which the Great Mother lifts the light of matter to fuse with the light of pure spirit via the mind as a mediator, and then all will become known. You do not have to follow any particular system, and it can happen spontaneously. But I would say the better to be prepared with information and knowledge, and sometimes it helps you develop a more custom approach to your spiritual development. But as the question was asked earlier, you don't have to be heavy laden with information to make progress on the path. In fact, I can argue just the opposite, that too much information, and it depends on a lot of circumstances, but too much information can actually be a deterrent to going to the next level. Okay.
Duane,
Yes,
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add something from my
please.
own perspective. Um, as I read through all that DK said about it in the various different books, I understand that some of the techniques that are taught that try and accelerate it, they do that when your body is not physically prepared,
Yes.
and you don't have to have knowledge per se of what's happening to you, but what you do have to have is your energetic system in total alignment. You have to have those chakras open. You've got to have that free flow of energy from the lower chakras to the ones above the diaphragm. You have to have them all all 7 along the spine up and running, so that the ones in the head then can work, so that when the Kundalini rises and when it burns through the webs, there's no ill effects, because your system is prepared for it and it's ready. Now, whether you've sat down and physically know all the mechanics about it or not, or whether you're just this really good person who is working from the mind and working from the heart and has the energy flowing properly, it makes a big difference. And the people who aren't physically ready above the diaphragm, but they artificially try and raise the Kundalini, these are the ones that, they can be paralyzed, they can be killed.
Yes.
It's an electrical system, and if you're trying to plug a 220 volts into a 110 system, something is going to give.
Yes.
So you have to, you have to be physically prepared for it.
Excellent point. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier, when the Kundalini begins to move of its own accord without a lot of artificial stimulation, it's time to really focus and begin to understand what that means. It's like a map. You really should have a map before you take yourself on a journey. That doesn't mean you can't journey without the map, but there's less impasses and cul-de-sacs and holes that you can drop into. Excuse me, I've just accidentally activated. Let's see, let's go back here. I need to go back, Rose.
I think you're back where you're
No,
three
okay,
the
there
3
we
crosses.
go.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm just going to read the bottom quote on this, because we've sort of covered the earlier part of the quote. It says, in the study of the crosses, the true meaning of their influence will only appear as you begin to think in terms of synthesis or of the relation of the four streams of energy flowing unitedly upon and through any form of divine manifestation. This is by no means an easy thing to do, for the ability to think synthetically is only just beginning to appear in the foremost minds of the race. We know in esoteric astrology that to really understand where somebody is, you have to more than just read their chart, which gives strong indications. You have to intuit. You have to activate your inner sense of psychic sensitivity in its higher form to be able to say, okay, is this person going through the first initiation, second initiation? Are they preparing for the third initiation? So this idea of thinking synthetically. Okay, the three astrological crosses. Here they are, the mutable cross, Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces, the fixed cross, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, the cardinal cross, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer. These three crosses in their totality of manifestation relate to the three basic energies which brought the solar system into being. They constitute the three major synthetic expressions of the supernal will, motivated by love and expressed through intelligent activity. Upon these crosses, the ability to see the whole, purpose, motive, expression, life, quality, appearance, shifts and changes. So we might say, just for convenience and time restraints, that the mutable cross is more average humanity that is under the sway of their three lower centers. The fixed cross sort of governs the first three initiations, and it's the cross of crucifixion. Then you have the cardinal cross, which is where you begin to operate with the monad, and it's a very, very advanced stage. And you'll notice that they all relate to earth, air, fire, and water. Each three quad relates to those elements. And DK gives three symbols for these three crosses in this way. And I apologize, it's not a high quality image taken directly, I believe, from one of DK's books. And he has little commentaries on them that are very powerful, and I suggest that people go back and do a little more research. Now let's look at the 12 astrological signs and see how they relate to polarity, because one of the keynotes of these presentations, as I said earlier, is electricity. And if you look at this, you'll see you have 12 zodiacal signs, and DK says that the 12 must be fused into the 6. Aries, Libra will be fused into one sign. Capricorn, Cancer will be fused into one sign. Gemini, Sagittarius, and on till we go right around the entire wheel. So there's always this forward motion towards synthesis. And here you can see how all 12 of those signs relate to the three crosses. And the red letter with the C is the cardinal cross. The M in green is the mutable cross. And just visually follow from like Pisces across to Virgo, Gemini across to Sag, mutable cross, and then the third, the fixed cross, like Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, Scorpio. So what we have going on all the time is this fusion of opposites and electrical types of energy that are keeping each other in balance until one has deserved the right to undergo initiation and plunge into the actual stream of these lives rather than just theoretically. Okay, the rays and the planes. We're going to end with an animation, several animations, and I just want to review what we've talked about in earlier presentations, excuse me, particularly around the rays and the planes that make up just about everything except for the will of the Father that we're going to deal with in our initiatory experiences. The rays and planes rotate in different directions as spheres, and by their interaction, the work of the four Maharajis, or the lords of karma, are made possible. The quaternary and all sum totals of four can be seen as one of the basic combinations of matter and produced by the dual revolutions of the planes and rays. Remember, every sphere has two opposing poles of high and low gray matter that are rotating in different directions, and their interfacing is where all the magic takes place. And that'll be better understood when we see some images. Okay, the seven planes, like the rays, they're like atoms. They rotate on their axis. The seven spheres of any one plane, which we call subplanes, equally correspond to the system. Each has its own seven revolving wheels. For those of you who have studied cosmic fire, they'll recall the idea of wheels within wheels within wheels, that every entity is a composite of lesser entities. And those lesser entities can't become aware of the parent or the greater entity until they are able to release themselves from the rings past knot, the constricting energy grid that they find themselves in. Now, let's take the seven rays and the seven planes. On the left, you have the seven rays, ray 1 through 7, starting from power going down to seventh ray ritual. And on the right, we have the seven planes, starting from the logoic down to the physical etheric. This is like taking an orange, like taking two oranges that you want to see pass magically into each other as spheres. But because we want to be sure that you get the idea of the rays and planes, we've like taken the peel off the orange and laid it flat. So what you're looking at, the seven discs in the center are the seven brothers of Fohart, or the seven sons of Fohart. They are the emanating prototypes where the seven planes and the seven rays come. But they're polar opposites. And I won't go into the numbers and the colors, but I would say this, that the rays are positive, the planes are negative, and yet the rays have a less, can also be broken down into electrical charges. Ray 1 is positive, ray 2 is negative, ray 3 is positive, ray 4 is negative. And it's the same with the planes. They fall into a major category of polarity, positive, negative, and then you can break them down and keep breaking them down to even their lowest subplanes. So just, we're quickly recapitulating here. Okay, now, if you can see my cursor, see the image on the left here? That is actually the same identical image without the text that I just showed you, the rays and the planes. Only what I did is I made it into a sphere. And this is background information for when we get into the crosses visually, that we need to look at the crosses as streams of energy that are in motion and that they can actually be spherical. Now, I want you to think about that concept because it's key to really understanding everything that we're doing here. We're taking the rays and the planes, which is the energies and forces that make up everything. You can take all of DK and Blavatsky's works, put them on your shelf, and you can reduce them to the 7 rays. Now there can be duplications of the 7 rays. There's hierarchies of the 7 rays. And we can say there's 10 rays because there's 3 primary rays and 7 subsidiary rays. But basically, it all comes down to the 7 rays. Cosmic, systemic, planetary. Okay. So okay, this is what it, now we're going to go into an animation where you're going to see the, like a ray sphere or a plane sphere animated. You've seen this before, but we will use this on a regular basis because it is so evocative. And for any of you that have done work with triangles, you'll begin to understand this quote by the Tibetan right here, just before we get into the animation. Triangles are in a constant state of change and circulation. It is well high, this is actually a quote, it is well high impossible for man to draw or make a picture of the network of triangles and at the same time see them taking the circular form in their totality of the etheric body of the planetary sphere. The reason is that the whole etheric body is in constant motion and ceaseless transformation, and the energies of which it is composed are in a state of constant change and circulation. So as we move into a better and better understanding of the crosses, we're just reviewing some previous comments and insights on the rays. So relax, take a deep breath, and we're going to do this animation. And go back to Makara and get these presentations. Okay, how are we doing for time?
10 minutes.
Okay, excellent. Any comments?
Not yet. Here we go. Go ahead, please, Vera.
Can we say that if our consciousness moves from the quaternary to the triangular, then the form will disintegrate the physical manifestation. I mean, globally, not just.
Well, those who have done triangle work know that one of the main ideas is to take a square. Our present planetary logos has a grid of squares, and to undergo the third initiation and to become a sacred planet, it needs to draw a line diagonally. This is done through visualization between one side of the square to the other, which creates two triangles.
Yes.
And when this work is successful, we will have the new civilization and the new era, the new Aquarian era that we've speak about and read about so often. Yes, we go from the rule of the square, to quote DK, which is the personality, third ray active intelligence, to soul perception, which is the triangle, and then to the sphere or the circle, which is monadic perception. So if you're getting any type of movement or heat or movement of energies watching these images, they are definitely very, very advanced images. And I wish I could say that I created them, but I actually did not create many of the animations, and I have no idea who the artist was. But when I saw it, I said, yes. Any comments?
But it wouldn't mean disintegration of the form. It's just the raising of the consciousness.
Well, the whole idea of initiation is that a greater life destroys the older forms, but it's not destruction as humanity normally associates the idea. It's actually the joy of giving up the lesser for something greater. And all forms have to eventually be dissipated, destroyed, or disintegrated by the power of the different levels of the spirit. And each initiation is, to quote from someone from the Bible, I was a John, I die daily in my love of the Christ. And what you're doing is you're giving up your attachment to your ideas, your theories, your perceptions of reality, and broadening them by listening to the ageless wisdom and adopting a whole new perennial philosophy. So yes, it's a type of death, but it's actually a taking over the new, the creative, the more beautiful, and it happens at every initiation. It's actually happening right now. Every breath that every member of this group takes right now, this process is taking place. What you are looking at in this animation is what the planetary logos is doing. They're drawing in redemptive force through the northern point of the sphere. It circulates throughout their system, and then it's discharged at the bottom. And yes, it goes back continuously to once again circulate, but each circulation is more advanced than the previous circulation, which shows that evolution is ever moving forward.
Thank you.
Rose is making some adjustments on the sound here. Any additional comments on the animation?
No, not that I see.
Okay. Okay, we're going to skip that one. Okay, this is we're going to end with an animation after, if we get 5 minutes, after just a few more quotes. Okay, we've actually, I think we've had this. Let's go to the next one. Okay, now I want you to look at this image. This is actually a scanned image of energy of a four-poled magnet. And we're dealing mainly with the mutable cross here. And in the next presentation, we'll review this in greater detail. But you have Sagittarius, which is the polar opposite of Gemini, on the mutable cross. You have Virgo, which is the polar opposite of Pisces, on the mutable cross. And so you have four main poles, but then you have each one of these lives has subsidiary poles. And that's why you see it looks like two eyes on each sign. Those are lesser poles. And when you can understand the hierarchy of electrical force as it emanates macrocosmically down into the microcosm, you will have unlocked one of the secrets of initiation and actually what is taking place when you pass through the portal of initiation. We have all kinds of descriptions, poetical and philosophical and metaphysical.
Wait. We lost your voice.
Okay, Rose is making some adjustments. Can you hear me, BL?
I can just barely hear you. It's like you're whispering.
Okay.
There, that's better.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So, okay, excellent. Thanks, Rose. Perfect. So, remember from the previous image where we had the 12 zodiacal astrological signs and that they represented these polarities, and there were three crosses of four energies, four signs. And we're taking only one of those, the mutable cross of Sagittarius, Virgo, Pisces, and Gemini. And I'd like to end this presentation on the idea that the most complex, the most metaphysical concepts, in my opinion, in the future will be reduced to animations. And that's not to say we don't need the preparatory information that leads up to that. And I apologize to all of you for not giving you more lead time to lead up to this, but I'd rather end on an animation and we can pick up the pieces in our next presentation and continue with the idea of the crosses. So if there aren't any additional questions or statements, we're going to go right into the animation. And again, imagine that this is an aspect of yourself, that this animation is not something you're simply observing. It's something that, as Marshall McLuhan, the great high priest of the media, said back in the 60s, you need to let images, animations, wash over you, to enter into your subconscious, your conscious, your superconscious, and that these are hierarchical symbols, and they're very potent when viewed with the right interior concentration. So relax, take a deep breath.
Margot de Vasia de Mai
Excellent. The health. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you had a question, but the hand went down.
That's all right. We can take questions.
Well, she took her hand down, so.
If any hands go up, just let me know, yell,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we'll put them on.
Okay, sorry.
All sickness, ill health, or disease, according to esoteric healing, is the result of the improper distribution of forces pouring through one or other of the centers. When you look at this mutable cross in motion, you can begin to understand how it's a composite. The dark center is really like the will, and it is galvanizing four extensions of itself, four representations of itself. And as you look at these magnetic and electrical lines, you can see that if there was any obstruction anywhere in this magnetic mandala, there would be a problem because it would have an effect on the whole organism. Humanity is electrical and magnetic in nature, and all esotericism teaches that it's not just reading about these theories and principles and laws, it's using them to make changes in the etheric body. And this is all done through the movement of energy from a higher level to a lesser level, to the macrocosm, to the microcosm, in many, many different ways. So you are looking at a perfect representation of one life expressing itself in four different ways. But those polarities make up a greater organism. Okay, are there any questions or anything to share either about this image or the actual animation?
Yes, Asha asks, well, she says, thank you, awesome. And any chance of link for this animation, please?
Oh, yes, we will send
Right.
those.
And we've been trying to do that for the last couple of presentations.
Yes.
We've included the slides, we've included the audio, the video of the presentation itself, but then Rose and I have worked to get the little meditations that Duane does to make them available also. So we'll do that again.
Don't be so concerned about the details. I give out a lot of information, and the information is not as important as being able to put yourself in a position to move into the fluidity of the rays and how they actually may exist or operate on the inner planes. Any questions or comments?
Yes, Risa says the animations tell us all is in constant motion, and yes, any obstruction would cause difficulty, illness, etc.
Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. Risa, thank you.
And Asha says, thank you all.
It's a real delight to share with all of you some small crumbs from an immense banquet that's really right there before us as we unfold our different bodies and principles and rays. Men and women, humanity is a great, great mystery. And I am a firm believer that we are going to have new tools and we're going to have new ways of presenting this perennial philosophy and ageless wisdom that will be very, very evocative and very dynamic. I could not, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, you have a
No.
hand up?
Yes.
And then we also have a comment from Diana. She says, why did you say that the black center is the will instead of the love wisdom?
Well, because behind all of the 7 rays stands the Father, the principle of directed purpose, and it's really the absence of anything. And out of that, love emerges, and out of that, active intelligence emerges, and all the lesser rays of attribute rays 4, 5, 6, and 7. And it's a place of pure being. And it's unknown. It's really unknown. And we skate around it and we allude to it, but it's a force that is what gives love its fervent heat and gives it its light and its magnetism. It's called the Absolute. Thank you, Diana.
Walter says blessings, and then Asha has her hand up. So let me go ahead, please, Asha.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiment that Duane was expressing before he answered that question. That it really is it opens the heart. It sort of piques the intuition, and somehow I cannot remember the factual form things that you mentioned, but I'm
Yes.
left with like the formless wave aspect.
Yes.
And that does take me to, like, it takes me to I can't explain it, I can't verbalize it, but it takes me to the absolute.
And it's probably real.
Yeah, it takes me to the absolute. When you use the word absolute, that was like, yep, that's it. It just feels the right word.
Just take what is useful. Pick through what we've shared with you. Take what's useful and then disregard the rest.
Thank you so much.
Because it's better to go away with one deep impression than 1,000 facts. And it's not that we don't need the facts, because the facts can qualify, categorize, and create a foundation. But that sense of expansion is what we need at this time historically.
Yes.
Excellent. Are there any additional comments or questions before we close?
I don't see any. Other than from me, thank you again for another wonderful webinar here. I agree with Asha. As I went through that last meditation there, my heart center was just pulsing with the music and with the animation. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Rose and I, go ahead, BL.
Oh, I was going to say, Sharon says, I don't think I'll see a cross the same way again. Looking at a cross, there's now a square and triangles and circles all moving together. Thanks. And Risa says, because of these animations, I can explain esoteric healing better.
Excellent. Well, we make these available because they are so powerful. They are not the artwork of any one person. I don't even know where half of them come from, but they have been made available for our use. And I hope anyone feels free to contact me about any additional questions or comments. I am here for you. And I appreciate many of you who have posted on the Facebook site, which does give us a little bit of continuity between sessions. So I want to thank all of you for some of your wonderful posts, and I really appreciate it.
I would just like to say that a lot of the still images are Duane's original artwork, and a lot of the animations are some of the, that he doesn't necessarily know where the creator came from, but are modifications to suit the esoteric wisdom that's trying to be conveyed through that. So a lot of the stills, yes, they are maybe just being a little modest, but a lot of those are Duane's.
Any additional comments, or we will close?
Nope, that's all we've got for tonight.
Excellent. Well, thank you,
you.
BL.
Thank you.
And we send our love and light out to the group. And may your holidays be joyous and full of beauty. Good evening.
Good night, everyone.